So today we are going to talk about how to use and how to build Kruger in Langrisser mobile. Different from Rain, I think Kruger is actually a okay-ish debuff unit. From my last video with Himiko, a lot of players in their comments, they really showed they don't like those debuff units. They hate their game lost because of RNG. But just to keep in mind that the debuff unit, their job is to apply debuff, and there is certain degree of like RNG from what kind of debuff they can apply to you. But I think for Himiko and Kruger, their debuff pool was pretty okay. It's not as bad as Rain. You don't have this heal reversing, you don't have a fixed damage that can get through your immunity. So if you can pick some healers like Liana, like Chloe, or like Iris, or like of course Rizosel, you can still kind of deal with those units if he's the only debuffer in your opponent. So yeah, with a reasonable pick and ban, you shouldn't be too afraid of this unit. But of course, Kruger is still very strong. He's very strong mostly because of his strong skills. His talent was pretty much alright, so there is a part that he can increase the damage dealt based on the total number of debuff his opponent's team have, and also the other part of the talent convert one of the buff into the buff after dealing with damage. So it's basically, a slightly stronger version of Bozo's debuff, of course. Bozo's talent. But Kruger has a very strong skill set. So the Wednesday skill is a shield skill that can allow Kruger to move extra 2 spots without losing the current buff. So you have faction buff, like for 4 turns, you use that skill. You keep the 4 turns of your faction buff still. It doesn't really consume a turn for the buff you have. And this is a shield which is kind of a new function in Langrisser mobile. I really think there will be new shield unit in the future, but right now this is still the only character that can put up a shield on your opponent. So this is a very strong skill because it not only make Kruger himself potentially be very tanky against certain assassins, you can also use the shield on, let's say, your tanks, so to prevent your tank, for example Juggler, to be sniped by a single target unit. So this is a really strong skill, can both increase his own survivability, but also can increase his friendly units of survivability. So the only thing for this skill is it lasts for 2 turns. So if you use it on himself, then basically that skill is only going to be effective for 1 turn. If you use that on your friendly unit, you still have a couple of turns, 2 turns, that you will not have the shield available for your friendly unit. So the timing to cast this skill is very essential for sure. And also when you are using this skill, you move extra 2 spots and then move again. So act again. So this is really this is a strong skill, but the timing to use this skill is really essential. And then the 2C skills are all pretty strong. You have the Black Hole, you have the Black Dragon Brace, and then you have the Acid Burn, which can bring the heal block to your opponent. So it depends on who you are fighting against and what kind of debuff that you really want to have for your opponent. And if you can easily approach your opponent, then maybe probably Black Hole is a better selection. But if you cannot, like this Black Dragon Brace can still have a little bit better range. You can have an easier time casting this skill. So the 2C skill, you will have to think about what 2C skill you're going to use. There is also a skill that can seal the passive. Usually people don't really bring this skill, but the other 3 skill depends on what is the situation you can use them. And then he also get a unique 2C skill, which is kind of debuff like 5 range around this unit. So it's basically a heaven suction range, and then it also gives your friendly unit a buff to increase their damage dealt by 10%. and also it also brings like a heal 15% of health points after the combat. So this is a strong buff for your single target unit as well. So Kruger, you can use him in a debuff team, but if you have a lot of single target units, he can kind of like to act like a support. Bring some debuff to your opponent, so they have to deal with it, but also increase the single target ability of your friendly unit a little bit. So this is a very unique 2C skill. Not necessarily you always use that, as I said, depends on the situation. Those are all the choice that you can have. The other skill you're going to use on Kruger is the 3C skill. 3C skill has two parts. The first part is like inflicting one of the unit in the battlefield with this viral effect. And at the end of the opponent's turns, this viral is going to explode and it's going to infect like 3 unit within 3 spots with like 3 debuff. So this is a pretty strong skill, especially if your whole team is based on debuff. Then these 3 extra debuff is definitely going to help you to fight in this combat. And of course, if you are player 1 as Kruger, you don't even have to ban Resource Seal if you have Kruger picked. So basically, if you apply this skill on opponent Resource Seal, they can't even put an immunity shield effectively against Kruger. If you're player 2 on the other hand, and if like player 1 has Resource Seal, they can put up immunity shield at the beginning, then you will not be able to use that skill on Resource Seal. So this skill basically makes Kruger a little bit stronger as player 1 compared to player 2. So this is the first part, which is kind of like a viral infection skill. And then the second part, after you use that, it becomes Dark Sanction. I call the skill Dark Sanction because it has a 0.36 damage factor plus like 2 debuff, and the range is like 5 spots around Kruger. So it's a pretty big area, and also with like 2 debuff. And if you're like per every unit you hit, the debuff, the cooldown of the skill will be reduced by 1. This skill will not be affected by clock, and this skill after you use is going to turn back into the viral infection skill. So you will not be able to cast this skill consecutively. So this means if you're using Kruger like with this 3C skill plus a 5 cooldown AoE skill, you probably will have a couple of turns that Kruger will not cast much skill effectively. Even the Act Again skill, as we said earlier, the Shield Act Again has a 4 turn of cooldown. So the timing for Kruger to jump in and use those skills are very effective. If you cannot finish the battle within like 3 rounds, after Kruger jumps in, you will be dragged into a long-term battle where Kruger will not be very effective. So this is the skills of Kruger that what you're going to use. Again, depends on how easily you can approach the opponent and what kind of debuff you want to bring to the opponent. You can use like those skill as Kruger. And then the troops for Kruger, usually you can use the sorcerers, so he can fly. And then if you want to tank assassins with the shield skill, it shouldn't be too hard for Kruger to tank assassins. So you can use this troop here to tank, or you can even try like Lancer or Skeleton if you are trying to tank from Celestial. So those are the troop selection on Kruger. And then for the gears and enchant, Kruger is a mage that can act again, move 2 again. So it is actually a little bit easier for Kruger to jump in compared to character like Basil. So usually for Kruger, Breeze is actually a pretty good selection for Kruger. So after Kruger has like Breeze, then basically you can move 5 and then act again 2. So move 5 plus 2 and then you can cast the other AoE skill. That makes Kruger has a really great threatening range. So Breeze is actually a very good enchant. When you are using Breeze though, Kruger is still pretty weak against assassins. So this is probably, I mean, depends on how good your enchant is. You have to test yourself, but probably with this kind of build, Kruger will go for the Miracle Wand. And you know, you can use Star Earring to still try to be a little bit effective against assassins. But if I'm using Breeze Enchant, the other gear that I would use is probably Word Rose, so you can remove some of the buff from the opponent as well. So I probably prefer Word Rose over the Star Earring with the Breeze side. So besides Breeze, you can also make Kruger pretty tanky by using Full Moon side. So Full Moon side, you can use Red Wand instead of the Miracle Wand, and then you can use Star Earring instead of the Volder Rose. So you can, this is really the site for you to tank assassins, and of course, it also gives you some extra tankiness against the AoE as well. So the other type of Kruger, also people call it, you know, the Thrown Kruger. So you can kind of fuck up if or your opponent assassin attack you, and then you trigger Thrown, and then you use the accessory that can reflect damage, which is let me see if the account has the gear. I kind of forget what the accessory is because I rarely use it, but it's one of the build that a few Apex Arena player use in the CN server. So you can go, yeah, I don't think we have it here. It's basically a ring that can allow you to reflect some of the physical damage taken. So yeah, if you are trying to like instead of like surviving against the assassins, you can let the assassin attack you, and then they kill themselves. And when you have a shield, probably you can survive, and the assassin will die. So that is another build for Kruger. It's not very popular, but you can surprise your opponent if they really like to use assassins. For example, if they still use something like Hihei, then could be a pretty good gear to counter them. So my favorite build is probably going to use Full Moon, but I think Breeze can work very well as well. Yeah, the reason I think Full Moon is better is because you have the shield mechanism to help you become pretty tanky, and then for Kruger himself, his talent has a part that can increase the damage by 30%. He really doesn't have mechanism to increase the intelligence, so Full Moon can bring up your intelligence further, so this can actually help him to deal more damage as well, as long as being more tanky. So I probably go with the Full Moon build, but again, Breeze build is also pretty popular in the Chinese server. Yeah, this is pretty much everything about Kruger. Later on, when the Apex Arena in the global server started, we will test out how Kruger perform in the next season. So with that, I will say bye bye for you guys, and we will have more character builds video coming soon. The ones I'm preparing to make includes like High-In and also maybe Vincent. So peace.